in Washington, D.C. I'm coming to see my congressman, but he's avoiding me.
Most Americans would be shocked, not surprised, but shocked, if they knew how much time a United States senator spends raising money.
How much time? The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee suggested to first-year senators that they plan on spending 3 or 4 hours a day soliciting donations. That's probably a fairly accurate estimate of how much time most senators do spend. This is a recording of an actual message left by Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton for an undisclosed lobbyist.
This is Eleanor Norton, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. I noticed that you have given to other colleagues on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and I'm handling the largest economic development project in the United States now, the Homeland Security Compound.
So she's told him that she's in charge of a multi-billion-dollar government project and implied that she will have discretion over where millions of these dollars will be deployed.
I was, frankly, surprised to see that we don't have a record, so far as I can tell, of your having given to me, despite my long and deep work essentially in your sector. I'm simply candidly calling to ask for a contribution.
Both Democrats and Republicans are tied to fundraising this way. There's a script in the form of a flow chart that the National Republican Congressional Committee gives to its members. They don't do all this fundraising just because they're greedy. If they don't raise this much money, they're probably not going to stay in office.
And this goes on and on and on. Raising money. And how much time we spend talking about raising money and thinking about raising money and planning to raise money and, going off on little retreats and conjuring up new ideas on how to raise money.
When he retired, longtime Senator Tom Harkin reflected on what had changed for the worse in his last years in the Senate. As Harkin sees it, one reason for the lack of bipartisanship is that personal relationships have broken down in the U.S. Senate because senators spend so little time together. He reminisced fondly about the fact that through the 80s and 90s, both Republicans and Democrats would socialize in the Senate dining room. As he put it, we would have lunch and joke and tell stories, a great camaraderie. But that throughout the 2000s, fewer and fewer people went, because they were spending all of their time fundraising, and eventually the Senate dining room was closed because nobody went. I'm not suggesting that we feel sorry for these poor members of Congress, although I do have some sympathy for them. But I'm more interested in what effect this has on our legislative process. So there's not as much time as there used to be to develop personal relationships in Congress. Even more amazingly, members of Congress are so busy fundraising that they actually don't have time. They don't have the time to study even those bills that they have sponsored. One member of Congress who insisted on remaining anonymous told reporter Ryan Grimm about a particular meeting that he had called. Even those members of Congress who had specialized in this particular issue area couldn't talk about the issue with any accuracy. They simply didn't have enough knowledge. Their staffs knew that they were getting the details wrong, but the members of Congress really had no idea. Almost all of these examples and these figures have come from the Senate. Remember that in the House of Representatives, they have to run for re-election 3 times as often. Is this as bad as it sounds? No. I think it's probably worse when members of Congress don't have the resources, whether time or staff, to craft legislation. They become even more reliant on interest groups to research and in some cases to even write the legislation for that. That's something we'll discuss in more detail next week.
It's all about the Benjamins, baby.